Let's switch over there.
Yes, behind Ed.
Is that better? Yeah, there we go. That's better.
Still a little bright, but better.
I don't think we're going to be able to fix that. I'm getting the glare off the snow coming into the windows. Anyone need a chair? Anybody need a chair? You guys want chairs? You all set? Okay. Get the monitor. I am actually a guitar player.
Yeah. I took a break from up there. What? I took a break from up there to participate.
How's she feeling?
Her stomach still hurts, but she's not so nauseous anymore. So
You know, every time I talk to somebody, she's sick. Somebody is sick, yeah. Okay, we're gonna get started here. There's some coffee and a little bit of smidgen of apple juice left, so if anybody needs anything, feel free to get up and get it. The food's gone though, sorry. So Jerry's going to do a brief recap of our first budget meeting, which was held a few weeks ago, just in case some of you were not at that meeting. So we had decided to do this budget portion of our annual event in 2 meetings because there was a lot to talk about and contemplate between the two meetings. So Jerry's going to tell you a little bit about what happened at the first meeting, and then we'll dive right into the updates from that. There were some action items from that. We'll have those updates and where we stand today with pledging. Jerry has a few slides he's going to run through, so just listen up to those and then, kind of hold your questions, and we'll have questions at the end. I will try to keep the order of, so please just raise your hand so I make sure we get to everybody in the order that your hands are raised, so we could all have a good conversation. Thank you.
And good news is she doesn't have to run out and catch a plane this time, so she can stay for the whole thing this time. Yeah. Before we begin, Wendell, can you lead us in a prayer? I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out of their day. I'm going to try to go as fast as possible since a lot of this was covered last time. But this is for you. You got the budget in your hand. Ask questions. And hopefully today we can move forward with our 2014 budget. So, Wendell?
Okay, oh God, we give you thanks for this beautiful winter day you've given us. We give you thanks for our church, our worship service that we just were a part of. Now we come to a more business side of our church that helps us understand how we operate and how we all have a part in that as a congregation in our democratic church. So we ask you to enlighten us and inspire us as members of your church. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen. All right, so just going to get right into this. As Marianne, she did our today's agenda. Just really quickly go over the facts of where we were on that last meeting. We finished the 2013 year $29,900 deficit. We did liquidate all $18,000. Thankfully, it was all interest. We did earn enough interest before we pulled big chunks of money out for the roof and the parking lot. The run-up in the market was insane at the beginning of last year, so that was awesome. We now know we've collected 98% of the 2013 pledge dollars. So when we pledge, we give. So that's awesome. Again, our historical trend is to vote in a faith-based deficit budget without the necessary increase in pledges to support it. That was one of the facts that we shared last time. 2013 pledges were short $29,500 of the approved budget last year. So as you see, our deficit is nearly entirely not getting to that budget number, the pledging number in the budget. The actual pledge amount for 2013 was $129,000 from 79 pledges. I highlighted these two lines because they are updated and there'll be some exhibits at the end. We have received 71 pledges totaling nearly $132,000 so far for 2014. And we have the same $29,000 pledge deficit as last year as of yesterday. Interest income cannot be counted on to cover the budget deficit in years past. Again, last year was a surprise, but if you think about it, we did pull a chunk of money out to do the roof and that stuff, so we just have less invested funds. So there's going to be less interest that we could possibly earn. And if anyone's paying attention to the market, it's kind of nutty right now. Last year we only gained gifts totaling $3.6 $3,600, and holding today's deficit steady. You know, again, everything has to be steady, and there's a lot of variables we're holding steady. About 6.4 years, if we just kept having these same kind of deficits, we're technically out of money. All right. Last time, one of the options that was voted down was the land sale option on January 5th, so that was voted down. And that is out. The other budget item that we discussed and had a lot of discussion on actually was deep cut option. It was also voted down on the 5th. We talked about eliminating, you know, what it would be like to gain $26,000 back in budget by eliminating part-time positions and or cost-shifting benefit packages and pastor equity stuff. That was voted down. The reason we brought that up to the congregation is because it wasn't our recommendation, but people had brought it to the business committee, so as fiduciaries we had to bring that to the congregation. And you guys acted. So that our remaining option is a faith-based budget. Our business committee recommendation is to have the faith that we can increase the pledging by approximately $36,000 this year. Actually, since January, we're up $7,000. So we've done a really good job in, well, basically a month. So really good job. As you saw today, there's pledging cards. If you're so inspired today, sign those pledging cards today and get them in so that Paul, where is Paul? Oh, there. So Paul can start working those numbers in. If this happens, we gain the following: a projected balanced budget in 2014.
That's a plot.
We can seriously entertain a church move or fellowship hall to generate income streams. And we get time. Because if we have balanced budget, we can hold our expenses down because we're only about 2 to 3%. Somewhere in there is what this proposed budget's going up. So we're really cost of living increases, or cost of I guess, it's not really living, but you know, you get what I'm trying to say. So we can hold the fort until interest rates rebound over the next 3 to 5 years. Because when interest rates are good, we typically do earn enough to cover our deficits. And then, of course, it allows us to replenish our funds through Raise the Roof, which makes a bigger investment fund, which gains more interest. So that's the positives of doing that. That's our recommendation, is for all of us to dig deep in our hearts, in our minds, and run some math at home and see what more we can do, if you can do it. Obviously, not everybody's in that position. We understand. It'd be a lot easier if everybody was in that position. It is our hope, again, like I said, that we reach that goal. But if we don't, it means we have faith that God will provide through a mix of unanticipated pledging increases throughout the year at any time, large legacy gifts, stock gifts, you know, through a capital gains reduction strategy, or new pledging members. We get 20 to 25 new members during the year who actually pledge. That's a significant, I'll chunk down that deficit significantly. So that's where we are there. Also, if we don't balance the budget, this is one thing I wanted to make sure that was clear. Again, we will need to liquidate funds to balance the budget like we did in 2013. So we will probably take a look at where the pledges are in February. I don't know if at the annual meeting we'll ask what funds we'll be taking out of, or we'll do a separate meeting, and we'll talk about in our February business committee meeting if the pledging looks like it's going to fall short. So that's that. And then I wanted to share this. Paul, let's see if I can get this. Well, Paul shared this. I don't know how many of you got the letter, the stewardship letter at home. This was the exhibit. We had the pledging units, the 3 different kind of buckets. They were we broke them down into logical groupings. As you can see, it's pretty close. Back then, at January 5th, we were 28% short of goal. It was 64 pledges received. And and Paul broke down, what's the average annual pledge, average weekly, and where do we need to be if we can get this? Is there a way to get this up? I want to get this up. Sorry, guys, some technical. Yeah, just a little, like right there would be perfect if we can get that. There, that's good.
Yeah, you adjust the keystone.
Alright, so I gotta go to Keystone. Technical difficulties, it always happens in one of these things. Alright, here we go. So there we go. We don't need to worry about that. So we don't need to worry about the title page. Alright, so if you remember, here's where we're at. And here's what, if we looked at the 3 buckets, we understand, if you're, group 1, there might be a ton of fixed income people, We understand that. So heck, if you can go by any, if we could give the bucks, which would be 15%, you saw that how much that would mean to the bottom line. Second group, maybe they can give a little more. That's why we went with 25%. And the larger group, maybe they can give 30. Bless you. Maybe you can give 33%. So anyhow, when that happened, balanced budget. And that was with just the 64 that we had last time. We should have, hopefully all of you received that in the mail with the stewardship letter. That was part of that exhibit. Where we are today, good news is, as long as I did my math right, we're about 18% short of goal, about 29,000. We have about $132,000 of pledges. That was back on that first page, which means we're $7,000 ahead. You know, we knocked down $7,000 of that $36,000 in 1 month, and that's where the pledging units are. We really didn't redo the exhibit below because some people have already increased, and some it'd be hard to do. We'd have to do much more thorough analysis, but. As you can see, you got a few more people in each bucket and a little bit more pledging dollars. So that's where we are today. And I think it's pretty clear. We're hoping as a business committee that, hey, we're voting in a faith-based budget, but hopefully, again, we can all take a look and see what more we can do if possible. And if not, somehow, some way we keep going. So, that's pretty much it. We took those other options off the table, and this is where we want to be as a congregation. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. You have the new budget. Paul, do you want to say something?
Yeah, let me just touch on a couple of points on the new budget. In our last meeting, we presented actually a $29,900 deficit based on where we were with the unofficial roll-up of the actual for 2013. Since then, column 3 on your handout is very close to an official roll-up for the year. So this includes the major or key thing that happened is that fundraising was an estimate at that time, and if you look at line 4045 in the top block on the front page, fundraising income for the year is astounding at $19,500.
Let's give a round of applause. Thank you so much.
And so we had assumed, we had budgeted $12,000, and we had on the expense side on page 2. In the middle of the page, you'll see a fundraiser expense on line 6085 of $3,000 is what we had budgeted for a net. That would be a net difference of $9,000 in our fundraising efforts. Because of, you'll see we were higher at close to $7,000 in expenses, but that was against almost $20,000 in income. So our net was about $12,000. Sorry. So our net fundraising income was $12,000. So that took that $29,900 that we presented as our expected deficit for 2013 down to just over $24,000. So that's obviously good news. That went right to the bottom line and took away from the deficit. So that's great news.
Everybody supporting everything, scripts, bottle drives. You keep doing it. We're going to keep rolling in those funds.
Yep. And a couple of other notes. On the salary line, if you go down to Wendell's salary line on line 6,000, the Business Committee and Pastoral Relations Committee had lengthy conversations about Wendell's salary for the year. And as you recall, last year we made a rather good adjustment in Wendell's package. We want to still show that we are continue to move forward. So there is it's a slight increase in Wendell's base salary. That's shown here. That's about a 1%. So it's, again, we'd like to do more with the case of our budget situation. That's where the negotiations between the two committees came in. But that does show an increase there, as well as we discussed before on line 6010 near the bottom under the organist choir director. There's also a slight increase for Chris on that line. And then if you flip the page under expenses, we added a line for youth programs. That was missed in the previous, so line 6040-1. There's a $1,000 budget increase there for youth programs. That was driven by our Christian Ed program leaders, and so we've added a budget line there. And part of the other increases to bring us to that 3% increase really relate to things like fuel oil. Fuel oil, everyone's been taking a hit on that. We're trying to conserve. One thing Business Committee's looking at is putting setback thermostats in the other rooms here so that the building, so that we don't come in into a surprise in the morning and find the building that at 70 degrees because the scouts were here. I'll pick on scouts, Tim, sorry. That, you know, there might have been a group here meeting the evening before on a cold night, and we inadvertently don't turn the thermostat back. So we are looking at ways to cut that, but everything else pretty much stays even for the year. So one other thing to add, we did break on office supplies, line 6054 and 6056. We had bundled our computer services, our IT information into the office supplies, and that's a rather expensive line item. Jerry keeps spending more and more money on upgrading our software packages, buying into various things. I'll throw him under the bus. But we did create a second line item there to show how our monies are being spent in the office.
But just so people know, the website was a pass-through on it, so there was a cost at church, but it was paid for by an outside source. So that was a net neutral there. So, all right, I guess, Ms. Moderator?
Okay, questions? Jill Trev has the first one.
Yeah, this is a small item, but I'm just curious. Under income, you have the church school offering, which gets donated every year to a charity selected by the kids, but I don't see that as an expense. So the little amount that the kids collect doesn't go into the general fund. I mean, how does that work?
Actually,
I don't see an expense of it.
yeah, that's a good question. I think it comes out of Christian Ed. I'll have to check that.
Okay.
Because we're tracking it on Sunday school receipts, so I know that's in
Yeah.
Power Church Net. So have you guys picked the charity that you are going to do
Yeah,
this year?
we picked last year's, and I'm not sure whether that got donated, and you and I can talk about that afterwards, but yes,
Yeah.
we have picked
Yeah.
this year's
Okay.
as well, but obviously we haven't collected all the years.
Right.
I just wanna make sure that money comes in and goes out
Right.
according to what the children decide, so I just wanna make sure that's happening.
Right, it does
Please-
go out
please
in
remind us, yes.
the expense line. I'll have to confirm if it's under Christian Ed is where the expense comes out. That's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any thoughts?
Questions, comments?
One thing I always want to make sure the congregation understand, which I know you do, the more we get close to balancing our budget or balancing, the more we can do for other people, other than just ourselves. And after all, that's one of the main reasons we exist as a church, is to do what we're talking about today, shed the light of our God and Christ out into the world. So that should inspire us to know that we can do a lot of good things that we presently aren't doing, or more if we get, the closer we get to balancing our budget.
Correct. Peter? Oh, sorry.
I couldn't, no, I
Can't
just
help
couldn't see. I should stand up here, your one. Go ahead, Peter.
Our church has 5 major committees, and it just appears to me that 3 of them are staffed well and functioning well. The diaconate, Christian Ed, and business committee. And the other 2, stewardship and evangelism, the people on those committees are doing yeoman's job, but Sarah, wherever you are, you're the only member on the committee, I believe. Yeah, so when we look at what you presented, which was presented very well, it seems the answer is, we need more members and we need to be better evangelists. And so I don't know where nominating committee is, but it just seems to me that we, all of those of you in this room, should consider serving on the evangelism committee, because you look around the room, I only see 4 or 5 families who are new in the last couple of years, and everyone else who's here has been here for a while. And then secondly, on stewardship, back in the mid-90s and in the mid-aughts, we had an all-member canvass where a committee under stewardship went out and visited every member, every family in the congregation. Because there's so many families who are not in this meeting. And so there are so many families who don't understand what was just presented because they're not here. And it just seems to me that this year it is overdue that stewardship organized, so if anyone's interested in stewardship, an all-member canvas so that every family can get visited and get the same message. So I don't know where nominating is or any of that. So.
I could respond to that. So we have, so Roger Rousseau and Dave Dixon and myself are the nominating committee. And yes, Peter, what you said as a recap of our most populated and least populated committee still holds true. We have a very thin evangelism, and by the way, it's evangelism and church growth is the official name of that committee. And obviously church growth is pretty self-explanatory. It's exactly what Peter talked about, growing our church through new members or just new participation. And stewardship also has a second part of its title, and mission. Stewardship and mission. So we think about stewardship as the stuff we just talked about, the pledging, but it's also missions outward. Yes, we have some of the youth missions George Fetzer has organized. We've done summer missions in the past. All that is not happening as much as we'd like to what Wendell just talked about in his sermon and just his first comment. We don't have the people volunteering to do those kinds of things. We're basically keeping the lights on. So that's going to be one of the challenges and one of the needs of the nominating committee, and more at the annual meeting on that. But that's certainly another focus. And how do we get people involved? And we have some creative ideas on that. But that's bluntly where we stand. Yep. Roger?
To that end, Dave Dixon and I are both working on nominating committee, and one of the things that we've tried to do as a focus is evangelism, specifically to Peter's statements. And one thing that we're trying to do is incorporate and fold in some of our most recent confirmands to try and get those the youth in our organization right out there and help us as we spot people that are coming on a newly basis, and try and have them come out and greet and say, hi, how are you? Glad to see you here, and try and get a little bit more proactive approach in terms of people coming in. So we do have that focus of trying to fold in the more recent confirmands into evangelism specifically for that purpose.
Yep, Dave.
Just to add on to what Roger said, I think that we all need to take this task to heart. That in terms of evangelism, church growth, it's everyone's job. We all have to do this. It's not just a small group. It's not just a few members of the deacons who visually spot somebody who might be new in church. If you see somebody that you have seen maybe only once before, or maybe it's their first time, it's all of our jobs to go up and reach out to that person, introduce yourself, get a name, get an address, bring them to Wendell, make sure that they shake hands with Wendell, and then follow up and try to remember to help Wendell what the name was, where they live, so that we can reach out to them. Very nice how I said that.
Give Wendell a name in writing.
Two people talking.
I'm now the head of the diplomacy committee. But it's all of our jobs to do that. So I would just encourage everybody, just to, if you feel uncomfortable doing it, let it go. If we can't do it here, we can't do it outside. You know what I mean? It's hard enough to do it in your workplace and people around the streets and people that you meet. If we can't do it here, we sure can't do it outside. So it starts here.
Jerry, you had a comment, and then...
Yeah, I just one thing I want to say is that we are doing more than just keeping the lights on. She's not into the budget as much as the business committee and stuff. We are doing a lot with UCC. We're doing a lot with Covenant to Care. Some of us do it individually. Some of the youth group we're funding, because I think that's one of the things. Get the youth in here, get them energized. That brings parents in. And church council, I know from being on that, there's a lot of good ideas going around on how we can think, out of the box, for lack of a better term. But to think differently and how we can possibly have different fronts going forward. So I think this year people are really taking it seriously that we need to do something. So Peter, that was once again an awesome point.
I have a follow-up
Yep.
to Dave, because it made me think of something. At our men's ministry breakfast on Friday morning, we did a Bible study from 2 Peter, and the basic theme was evangelism. And the takeaway was to try to think of at least 5 people or 5 families that you know who you could help bring to Christ. And that's a very difficult task, I know, but if you want homework today, really think about, are there 5 people or 5 families that you know who, if they could be brought to Christ, they'd be better off. And by bringing them to Christ is inviting them to church. So, food for thought. And don't think about one thing. Think if you can think of 5. And if a quarter of us can all get one to come to church, we got a beautiful new member class. So.
And the beautiful thing is we're actually going to fix our bathrooms, which will be warming and inviting versus run as fast as you can from this place. So.
Sean.
I just want to say, because Sarah apparently had to leave, but she did come up and say that she wanted stewardship and evangelism to kind of work together and come up with ideas. So I think that's something that we're going to do shortly. And, we're relatively new to being on the committee, so this is all good information for us. Just as a newer member and someone who, is not inside the Burlington community, and I don't know a lot of you all, really, really well yet, I just think, this kind of communication is extremely helpful, especially with me, to, hear different ideas and feel like, we could bounce things off of one another. So I think more meetings, more communication, things like that, even if it's just phone calls, emails, just a place to have, just maybe like an idea meeting. Because sometimes, you have a lot of different ideas in your head, but you don't know what everyone's thinking, I don't even know who's all on what committee, who all, like you're talking about men's ministry, you guys have, I don't even know about all these little other things that are here inside the church, so maybe, just something that tells who's on what and what every committee is and what every body does.
And at the annual meeting, that's exactly where that kind of communication happens, I guess more formally. So that's February 23rd. It's after service. It will have a list about who's on the committees now, what needs we have to fill committees. The committees will give a report on their activities of 2013. We're also going to kind of look back on the year just in general, so not just reading through the committee reports, but a little slideshow kind of thing. We have also on the agenda kind of what we want to be when we grow up, right? Kind of what our goals are. Including a lot of what we're talking about. And of course the website has tons of information constantly being updated, their committee information and member names on there. But yeah, we're trying to find a bunch of different ways, and to your point about the stewardship and evangelism, we've been talking about that a lot, in a lot of different ways, at church council over the last year really, since I've been moderating it. I mean, every month we talk about how can we make this all work better, right? So we're not literally shutting the doors in 6 years. I mean, I hate to put it that bluntly, but that's what we just can't keep, So we're trying to do, any new ideas on how to evangelize church growth, which then hopefully translates into some stewardship and missions, is welcome and appreciated. But a quick note, we do have a few new families that I think are gonna be joining. But it's not, certainly a few would be nice to have a lot more. So, okay. Oh, one more other thought about just to Peter's when he was talking about the challenge of the 5. So Sonia and Evangelism have put together a mailing. We get from the town hall who's moved into Burlington. And we've sent out a letter, welcoming them to our community and giving them a little information about our little church here. And, but, it's just a letter that they get in the mail. It's like a welcome wagon kind of thing. So, but if you have a neighbor that just moved in, that's another good opportunity maybe to do your homework assignment. Okay, any other discussions? Items? Yes, Lila.
Just something, Jerry, I wonder if you just might elaborate on the projections of what we had at our council meeting about if we were able to meet our budget, having a fellowship hall, what that would mean to us.
We gotta balance the budget before we can think about moving or building a portion of that move, which would include that fellowship hall, part of that. So it's kinda premature to get into a big discussion on that.
But that would lead us into a
Right.
projection of
get,
where we
Yeah.
want to be.
Loans and stuff.
Some of the ideas that have come out and say, hey, if we can't move the church right away, can we build a portion of that move, which would fellowship hall was a plan of it. So get that up and going and create different income streams. Weddings, business meetings, our functions, Little League, you name it. It's as much as your mind can do. So there seems to be a lot of questions from all different sources coming into that. I know it's being handled at different levels, and that'll be addressed at the annual meeting. But going forward, it's not going to happen a year or two. It's going to take time to plan it. You have to do your homework. I think I said in the last time, you really have to, and just what the steering committee went through. I mean, there's a lot of homework to be done, so it's not an overnight process. But yes,
But it's a projection of where we want to be someday.
correct. Yeah, and I think that's what we need to get that as a separate topic and start moving forward on that. So that's coming down the pike.
But one of the enablers, I think, to that is, we need a bank loan, right, to fund a building or a move. No bank is gonna give us a loan if we don't have a balanced budget for not just 1 year, but a few. I mean, maybe they will, I don't know, but it's probably difficult because they're gonna say you can't even pay your bills. How are you gonna pay their mortgage back? That we're gonna loan you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we wanna all get there in some form or fashion. But honestly, that's a prerequisite. We have to have our, one of them.
Yeah.
One of them.
And we've heard it from the steering committee 1,000 million times, and it's true. We still have to wait for some of those dominoes to fall. I mean, you brought up clearly that when things start happening, that might help us in the mortgage arena because our land becomes much more valuable. So there's things that are going to happen, and they are being worked on. So I guess that's what, for this meeting, I don't want to get too far out of the stray from what we're here for today, because that's definitely going to be a big topic and things we're going to move forward on. But thank you for bringing it up, because it should be on all our minds that let's start thinking of different ways of, like for instance, I didn't even mention my favorite things, like we had a fellowship hall set from the building. You run a bingo event. Let me tell you, I know 3 or 4 churches that do that, and that solves a lot of budget needs. So anyhow, that's it for me.
Any other, yes?
Couldn't we start with a bingo event in here?
We've,
To raise funds?
so fundraising, we've looked into that a couple different occasions, and, Sue fill in where I'm leaving out details or, and to make it, revenue producing, you really need a lot of number of people, and you can't fit more than 30, 40 people in here.
Plus our bathroom situation.
Plus,
we're not
yeah,
handicapped
plus,
accessible.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've explored it.
Totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
Just asking.
We thought, can we do something small, but then it's,
Yeah, make
we're
it
always
right.
doing you balance the effort versus the.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's been discussed, still not a tossed out idea, that's for sure.
We
Any
ready?
other discussions before I?
I wanted to give you a little story, just real quickly. It's sort of like what Peter's been saying about bringing in new people. Sometimes we're a little reluctant to talk to our neighbors about, I go to this church, would you like to come with me to church? Are you a believer, so on and so on. As you might or might not know, I do quite a bit of outside funerals down at Frank Ahern's funeral home for people who don't have clergy. We also do quite a few baptisms here at the church for people who don't have any church. And a result of those occasions, I always say who I am. I represent the Congregational Church of Burlington, tell them the history of the place, tell them about the place. And as a result of that, sometimes people will come back. Today there were 3 ladies that were at a funeral I just recently did who decided to try us out. I mention that because that's one way we can sort of testify to our faith without trying to convert people, which makes some of us nervous. If we just say where we go, what our church is like, do you have a church, do you have a faith? A lot of people don't. And by what we say and by what we do, we can influence people, and we might get them in the door. Just expecting people to always come to us is a little unrealistic in today's world. We have to be a little bit more aggressive, even though it makes us uncomfortable. We can testify, what I call testify to our faith in many different ways. Not just by what we say, but by what we do. The Malervo occasions, people see that's our church, the bottle drive. There are many things we do to influence people and affect people in our community that might get them in our doors, get them to try us out. So think about that too, as not just trying to convert somebody, but it's how you might share your faith and joy in this place to people you know. It has an effect. So anyway, so
Oh, okay. I think I'm gonna call for a vote. So final, any comments? All right. So I'm gonna call for the vote.
I'll count this side, you count that.
So, we need a
Yeah, we need a
motion,
motion,
please.
someone put up, I'll put,
Bill,
I make a motion that we approve the presented budget.
Second.
we got a
we
second?
have a second motion. Okay, there's a motion on the table to approve the budget as it's been presented. Any discussion? Further? Okay. Then a call for a vote. All the affirmative,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Keep your hands up, we gotta count.
members only.
Members
Yeah,
only.
Biracial monkeys. Counting people? Of course, now I can't see.
Oh. I thought she was done.
Liz, did
I have 39, but people are putting their hands down.
Yeah,
Okay, what'd you get?
I got 40, we'll say, I think it's 41.
41? Any opposed?
Any opposed?
1? Any abstain?
Anybody abstaining? Okay, got it.
Was there an abstain?
Yeah, no. It's an opposed.
So 2 opposed. Sorry, I put my eyes down. So we have 41 in favor and 2 opposed.
So the budget
So the motion is passed as presented. Thank you. Thank you all for all your efforts and for obviously staying here. And please, again, the February 23rd, it's always the same folks, so thank you, but if there's someone that, you normally don't see at these kinds of meetings, that you sit next to in the pews, it's a very important meeting as well.
So Jerry,
So it's a pop.
are there pledge
It's
cards
pop-up.
here?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, please, if anyone's been so inspired, I know we were, so we have upped our pledge, I believe Dave Dixon just upped his pledge today, there are pledge cards right in the chapel room. Do it now, do it while it's fresh. And, thank you for coming,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
He was.